Navigating Amazon's competitive landscape just got easier. In this video, you will learn how to analyze search query performance data to benchmark your products against competitors. You will understand the key metrics like clicks, impressions, orders, and you will learn where to focus in order to maximize your Amazon sales.
Hello, Nick. I'm really happy to welcome you on our OrangeClick channel today because you will help sellers to find data goldmine that Amazon now offers for sellers. And you will also share some tips how sellers can actually analyze the data and show what they can actually do to improve their product listings. But before we go into the details, could you first introduce yourself and also let us know what Boomed Agency is and what you do for the sellers?
Yeah, Lizette, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be on it. I'm glad you said boomed. Great, we get Boomed, Boomed, goodness knows what. So yeah, it's an unusual name, but we're Boomed. I've got a couple of slides, but I'll maybe go on to that in a moment. But we're an agency based in Europe. We're actually based in Poland. We focus on Amazon, vendor and seller, and some other marketplaces as well.
Okay, yeah, I do know you have some slides prepared for us where you go a little bit more in depth with what kind of services you offer and who's behind Boomed as well, because today you're here with me, Nick, but there's also a partner of yours who also was recently at one of our events actually as a speaker too. So let's waste no time. Let's go straight into the slides, and we're excited to hear what you can teach us today.
Okay, so that's our introduction. So I say we cover Amazon, Allegro, and a few other different marketplaces for vendors and sellers. So you mentioned my co-founder. It's actually my wife, Paulina. We have a whole team of ex-Amazon, ex-e-commerce specialists that work with us. But we're actually a British-led team based in Europe, in Poland. In Gdynia, you can see a little picture there I've included. It's an absolutely fantastic city on the Baltic coast. It's nothing like I imagined Poland would be. So if anybody fancies traveling to Poland, I'd fully recommend it. So we look after sellers and vendors on Amazon globally, all marketplaces. We also look after Allegro, which is a very big marketplace, the dominant marketplace in Poland. And there's some other platforms. So for example, eMAG, which is Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria. So we cover that as well. We've got a very extensive experience helping brands to launch on Amazon, which is pretty challenging, and to grow internationally. So if they've got a base market, they might be exploring other places. How do they go about doing it? We do a lot of analysis for them. Everything we help and propose to them is data-driven. So we don't just guess at the next answer. We look at the data they've got. We look at the marketplace, the competitors, and help them with those launch plans and those growth plans. We focus very much on profitability. I'm sure anyone that's watching your channel would have seen and will be fully aware of just how challenging it is to sell online. Amazon's costs are going up. Everybody's costs are going up. And so profitability is absolutely the #1 driver for many sellers and vendors at the moment. So we focus very much on that and also on outstanding customer satisfaction. There's two customers here. There's the sellers and vendors who are our customers, and then their customers on the e-commerce platforms. So everything on these platforms is credibility and trust driven. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be successful. So we focus on that. I've included a small link, QR code, that's to LinkedIn. So a like and a follow would be great. Okay. So what are we talking about today? You've given me the opportunity to come and talk about a topic. So we've actually picked brand analytics. Now, a component of that is search query performance. There's an awful lot, a year and a half or so ago when Amazon launched this. There's a lot online about exactly what it is. And some of these articles go into great depth about every single field and item of data that you can find. There's very little accessible content about what you actually do with this data, because it can be pretty overwhelming in terms of the volume, especially if you've got a large number of SKUs, lots of marketplaces. It's overwhelming, and we've seen this with many of our customers. It's in fact so overwhelming, they just don't even look at it. They see the data, but they don't know what to do with it. So we are going to spend some time going through what it is, but in a business context, and then some tools, some techniques about how you would actually use that data to make a real difference to your selling. And I think that's what's important. So hopefully people will get something from this at the end. I've got another QR code for those that will wait through the presentation. Allow them to. We're offering some promotion with you, which allow people to get a free assessment. So let's move on. So why do anything? There's three parts of this presentation. Why do anything? What can I find? And how can I use it? So some really practical tips, tricks, and things to do. So let's start off with why do anything. So you might ask yourself, as a seller or a vendor on Amazon, why are my sales lagging behind when I compare myself to last month, year on year, for example? And there's so many different data points. It's very difficult to make a decision as to what might have caused that drop. Are there more competitors now for similar products to you selling? Or is traffic down? Now, the danger with any of these is that if you make the wrong assumption about what's changed and what's driving the pattern of sales that you see, you could end up changing something that has a detrimental effect, and that would be an absolute disaster. So you could end up going backwards if you analyze this data incorrectly. You might look at why are you losing brand share? You've got lots of great search terms that you used to rank very highly on. Are you still ranking as well? How do you compare to other people? You might also ask, at what stage are my buyers dropping off in the sales funnel? We'll go through the sales funnel again in a moment in terms of how that's relevant to Amazon. There's lots of different steps that people go through, lots of behaviors that they exhibit at each stage of that process. Where are they dropping off? And is my click-through and conversion rate better than my competitors? Wouldn't it be great to know? Okay. So let's look at this brand analytics, and I'll cover the topic in general, and then we'll drill down into search query performance, it's called, which is the really, really interesting bit we're going to cover today. So there's your data goldmine. I mean, Amazon is a data goldmine. They do expose quite a lot of the behavior and that people exhibit on the platform. There's more in seller than there is in vendor. There is some in vendor still, which is great. So, but this is addressed primarily at the seller because there's more there. And there's two big parts of it. There's the behavior side, but I'm going to focus more on the search side. And one of these is search query performance. So Amazon gives to you the top 1,000 searches that led customers to your products. Now, you can see that at the brand level, and you can also see it at a particular ASIN or product level. You can get the impressions, the clicks, the basket ads, and the purchases. Now, there's one extra thing in there that you wouldn't normally see is the basket ad. You wouldn't see that in advertising data. You wouldn't see it in your business performance. But basket ads is a critical step within the e-commerce funnel, and we'll come back to what we can do with that information. So we've got brand data, so your brand and your ASIN data, and you've also got market share. Now, this is the magical bit. You can actually see what your competitors are doing and how you compare each one of those search terms over time. So that's great, and I'll show you how you do it. Now, also within search, something called top search terms. So this allows you to view the top search terms within your category for your the top three click products, the categories, and the brand. So you can see how you rank, who's ranking most highly on those particular terms. So you will know, I'm sure, if you're a seller or a vendor, which are the most important search terms for you, and you can see if you're ranking organically for these really important categories and products. Now, on the behavior side, this is great again. Now, some of this data Amazon is exposing through what we call APIs. So through the back end, you can suck this data out of the Amazon system into a reporting tool through these APIs, or you can get it through a download as a spreadsheet. If you're doing it as a download as a spreadsheet, it's much difficult because you've got to go and repeat it. But actually for the search query performance, which will come on, they have not exposed that through the APIs yet. So there is a download process. Anyway, on the behavior, you can see the repeat purchase data for the brand and the ASIN. You can see the demographic information. So age profile, education background. Now, that is not available in every marketplace due to GDPR requirements. So for the US, you'll have much more information that you would have than you would have in the EU, for example. But there is some there. and probably more there than you could get on the likes of Facebook and elsewhere since the restrictions on cookies. So then we can go down to shopping baskets. So you can see the products that were put in the same basket as yours or purchased with yours. Again, some of this is changing over time as Amazon starts to model this differently and expose more or less of this over time. Now, we're going to focus on the search query performance, but before we do that, let's just take a quick look at the funnel, because I'll use some of these terms later. I just want to make sure all of the listeners we're talking the same language. So if we look at the top of the funnel, this is awareness, or what you would call impressions. Now, there are stages outside of this where you're pushing traffic maybe from other channels. It could be TikTok, could be Facebook, could be Instagram, higher up the funnel. But as far as Amazon's concerned, the awareness of your product really counts as an impression. If somebody's interested, they're going to click. So that's straightforward. They move down the funnel. So you'll get fewer clicks than you will get impressions normally. And then if there's an intent to purchase, so think, okay, I'm not going to I'm interested in this product. I'm going to add it to my basket. Now, there's lots of different behaviors here. Some people are basket adders. They add a whole load of stuff and they keep it as a term of reference, and they'll come back in a week's time or a month's time and then compare, see if the price is lower. So people use the basket in different ways. Some people, like me, a bit more ruthless. I see it, click, buy, done. So that's an add to basket. Now, we actually get that data in search query performance, and we wouldn't get it anywhere else. Then if somebody decides they're actually going to purchase something, that's what we would call a conversion. So they've decided to order. So we got the impression to click, to basket, to order. Fantastic. That's gold for us. But there's one more step. And we don't get this in search query performance, but we get it in that behavior, is repeat orders. And that's really where your profitability is going to come in as a seller or a vendor, is if you can get that loyalty from customers and they buy the same product again, or they come back to your brand and buy another product from your brand. So really that's really nirvana. That's what we want to get to. It's loyalty, meaning repeat orders. But anyway, that's the funnel. So let's move on. Now, in the seller account, if you go to your menu, where do we find this? So we go down to brands, brand analytics, and then we click on the seller search query performance. You'll see there it's highlighted in the top graphic. And on vendor, we can get top search terms, repeat purchase behavior, and market basket. So you can see you haven't got search query performance there, but you can still do some really interesting analysis on your brand and where the competitors are on certain keywords. But for today, we're going to focus on search query performance. So that's where you find it. Now then, there is a lot of data here. I've whizzed on too many. There's two things I want to show you. There's the brand view, where you can select your brand. If you might have just one brand or multiple. So you have to be brand registered, by the way, to get this data. You can go by different time periods. So there's weekly, monthly, quarterly. And depending on if you select a week, you have to choose which week. And you'll see here, it will show you lots and lots of data. And that thing scrolls to the right, by the way, and there's loads of stuff. So it's going to show you 1,000 of those per whatever the period is. And it will show you the impressions. So you can see there's search funnel impressions, search funnel clicks, and off to the right, it's basket and purchase. Tons of data. And you can do the same for the ASIN in a slightly different format, but you can go for whatever time period you choose. You pick an ASIN, it will show you the top 1,000 or the top number of searches that led people to the ASIN. Now, I must point out, you're actually going to get the orders here. I mentioned it'll sum up the orders per search term. It's not going to match the order count that you have in your business reports or your orders summary or advertising, because this is getting data from the search box that people type in to find products on Amazon. It is also not going to include data from things like widgets where it says people also bought, or other ways of getting to products. So please remember that. But I do say to people, well, look, it's not complete data, Nick. Why? It's not going to be relevant. But it's the same methodology for you as it is for your competitors. So everything is relative to each other. So, but just in case anybody goes in and panics and says, it's got half of the number of orders, well, that's the reason why. Now, you can drill down. So on the ASIN, you get a little bit even more information. You can click on an ASIN and then you can see how you compare exactly in terms of click share, impression share, and so on for that ASIN, and the other brands that are selling, which is fantastic. So you really get detailed competitor data there. Now, for today's discussion, we're going to focus on brand side of search query performance, but for lots of our customers, we actually drill down to ASIN level because it gives us a lot more detail. Now, just imagine, okay, I've shown you some of the screens. You can get data on a monthly or a weekly basis for these 1,000 terms, every marketplace, pretty much every marketplace. And you can imagine how quickly that would become overwhelming in terms of trying to analyze that data and find the patterns and do something about it. So we automate this for our customers. We have built tools and databases and dashboards that allow us to aggregate all this data, search through the data for patterns that we define, and then make that easy in terms of what the next steps are to do. But the key here is, if you go in and just look at one period's data, 1 week's data, or 1 month's data, it's interesting, but you couldn't possibly, or I would recommend you shouldn't, make any decision on that data, because it's actually the trend that's important. It's how you compare to last week, to last month, to last year, so you can see whether you're improving or whether you're getting crowded out by competitors, and that's the key. So that's how we go about helping people. Now, how can you use it? So this is the more practical aspect. So we've talked about why do anything? Why would you be interested in taking some time to look at this data? What sort of data can you find? And then how are you going to use it? So that's the bit we're going to look at. Now, there's three, a bit more technical, but there's 3 aspects to this. You extract the data in some way and you transform it so that it becomes a little bit more useful to analyze it. Then you analyze it in dashboards, spreadsheets, whatever way you've got. We've already built tools to do this, but you don't have to use those. And then you have to say, well, here's the patterns I've found. What am I actually going? What is that telling me? What am I going to do? What's the next best thing to do based on the data that I've found? So we're going to go through those 3 steps. Now, when you download the data, you get it as a little box at the top right. You can choose whether there's a simple view, so that just shows fewer columns, sort of 20 out of the 33 or whatever it is. But I recommend going with the comprehensive view. I don't know how long Amazon, none of us knows how long Amazon's going to keep this data exposed. They might choose in a month's time, a year's time, to actually, show less of it or get rid of it altogether, because it's pretty interesting data in terms of helps you with your competitiveness. So anyway, I would recommend downloading it, go with the comprehensive view, and do that per period that you want to do. There is no API access at the moment, certainly not that I'm aware of, and I keep up to date with Amazon's technical updates. So at the moment, you've got to go through and download it, but it doesn't take long. Do that per marketplace, decide how much history you want. That's important for you. We personally do it on a monthly basis. There's not many customers we bother to do it on a weekly basis. That's a serious amount of change. If you want to do it like 50 times a year, it's not particularly worth it. So go for the comprehensive view. Now then you've got to analyze it. Now, there's lots of ways to do this, but we analyze various metrics within this over time. Sorry, it's quite a busy slide. I will explain it. Lots of metrics over time, and things like click-through rate, click to cart, conversion rate. We compare the brand to the marketplace. But it's only when you do that over time and when you compare yourself to the broader market that patterns start to emerge. So let's just drill down on that. And this is, by the way, this is real data, anonymized, of course, but from a customer over a period of time. So let's just look. So I'm looking down the middle funnel at the moment, and all of this data, by the way, has just come from that spreadsheet that's downloaded. So this is how we do it. So we can see the aggregate, the total of search queries in the period we're talking about was 25.2 million. Now that means there were 25.2 million entries in a search bar on Amazon for the market we were looking at. This is just the US. Now, it led to 567.9 million impressions. So people go, hold on a minute. How come there's more impressions than there are? That doesn't really make sense. What Amazon's counting here is the total number of products that get displayed for those search queries. So if you were to type in USB cable, USB-C cable into Amazon, what would happen is you'd get pages and pages of products that match that search query. And if you scroll through a couple of pages, you're going to end up with 100 or so impressions. And that's what it's counting here. Okay, so it's counting the total number of products that were displayed to the customers for those search queries. Now then, how many of those impressions led to clicks? Amazon's counted that all up. I mean, it's enormous. You can imagine it's just one brand. Just how much data Amazon has got behind the scenes. It's utterly incredible. But that led to 6.9 million clicks. Of those 6.9, 2 million went to the cart, and it eventually ended up being just under 500,000 orders. So we can work out on the right-hand side, this is how we do it. We know that the market click-through rate is 1.2%. That's the number of impressions through to clicks. We know that there's 28.7% of for these search terms, 28.7% of those clicks end up going to the cart, and we know that 6.7% of the clicks go to convert through to. Okay, so we've got now what we've got is we've scoured all of that data. We've got the volumes, but most importantly, we've got click-through, click-to-cart, and conversion rate data that we can compare ourselves to. So on the left-hand side, we can get the numbers again from the spreadsheet. We can say, well, how many of those impressions, that 567, with color code to make it easy, 567 million impressions, how many of those were ours in the time period we're talking about? Well, 6 million. Okay, well, that's 1% of the total. So we got 1% of the impressions. Okay? It might be good. It might not be. You can't compare, we wouldn't compare two brands together because in a different marketplace, there's different number of competitors, different number of products. What you compare yourself to is your competitors in your space and yourself over time. Now, if you go down, so I'm on the left, the yellow box on the left, how many clicks did we get? We got 60,000. Okay, that's 1% of the total clicks. And our click-through rate is 1%. So we're just under the market average. Okay, not bad. But if we were the market average, what would 0.2%, how many more clicks would that be? Be interesting to know. And simple to work out. The next one down is the green. So of the 60K clicks we got 20,000 of those led to somebody adding it to the basket. That's great. So we got a 33% click to cart versus a market of 28.7. Okay, we're doing better. So we know that on average on the brand, when people click our product, invariably they add it more often to the cart than they do for our competitors. Great to know. And 5,000 of those led to an order. I always find this interesting, just how much of a drop-off there is. And this is pretty consistent across a lot of sellers. Between the cart and the eventual order. So you can see there's 15,000 there that have been lost for some reason. Now, there might just be, like Paulina, she admits to this, she's a like incessant basket adder. So she just does that and keeps track of stuff, right? But I don't. If I've added it to the basket, usually I'm 90% of the time I'm going to buy it. But that's not what is happening here. However, our conversion rate is 50% higher than the market conversion rate, at just under 50% higher, which is great. So this tells a good story. I've plotted a couple of graphs there below just to give you an idea. We have lots of different graphs which show over time what's happening to the brand share. This is query volume, brand share of the volume versus the market, and we can do it. Any of these metrics you can plot over time versus. Right. So there's an example of how you might chart and plot all of this data that's streaming through. Remember, it's per marketplace, per brand. What are you going to do with it? Because that's about as far as a lot of articles go. There's lots of different ways to do this, but we've got to try and we come up in our agency with this pattern matching thing. So there's different scenarios, things that trigger our attention. And so you'll see at the top of this table, we've got searches, impressions, click share, clicks to cart, and all. So we've got different stages of the sales funnel. And then we've got 2 rows, 1 row for the market and 1 row for your brand as the seller. And we compare them. So we try and make it really simple without losing too much information. Again, this changes over time, but we take a snapshot. And let's just see what this is saying. So we can see that this, and we actually had this exact scenario just last week for one of our customers. One of our new customers had come to us and they'd had a problem. And they were worried that their decline in sales was because people were less interested in their type of products. And when we drilled into the data, that actually wasn't the case. The case was the search volume on Amazon, and this was Germany, had increased by 30% over the time period they'd seen the decline. But their orders had declined, and their clicks to cart, as it happened, had declined as well. But what had really declined was the impression share. So they'd actually been drowned out, so we've called each one of these something. Okay, so we've called this drowned out. You're being drowned out by your competitors because although the search volume is increasing, you're not even keeping your same share. You're actually getting a declining share of an increasing market. And even if you keep the same conversion and click-through rate, you're still going to get fewer orders. And that's what was happening. And actually, even worse, they'd seen a slight improvement in click-through and conversion rate, but it hadn't made up for the fact they'd been drowned out by competitors and they'll get far fewer impressions. So what do you do? Well, if you're being drowned out, this is organic data. So organic search. This isn't advertising data, although that's also relevant in terms of actions. So you've got to review hidden keywords. How are you ranking? Are you looking at your bestseller ranking over time and tracking it? Because the lower the bestseller ranking, less often you're going to be put forward by Amazon as a matching product. Remember, Amazon's whole drive is to delight the customer. They want to present the best possible products they can for a customer's search term. And if you're not getting, you don't match that search term accurately over time, then Amazon's going to put forward different products. So it's obvious. Check the main image, the title, the bullet points. But really, it's the words in there that are matching the search term. Make sure you're relevant and track bestseller ranking. Now, you could also look at advertising campaigns for this keyword. And this is the Amazon flywheel. So the more you invest sensibly in advertising for specific keywords, and you start to see sales coming through for those keywords, Amazon's going to improve your bestseller ranking. As a result of that, you're going to rank more highly organically for those search terms, and it's like a virtuous circle then. So that would be an example. So let's have a look at another one. So this is where your products appear relevant, but shoppers are less inclined to click. So the searches are up, impressions are up, but your click share is down. So why might that be? Well, main image is incredibly important on Amazon, increasingly so as more people shop on mobile, where the image is less prominent and things like bullet points are pushed further down. So you've really got to make sure your images are less appealing. I'd recommend taking some time to have a look at competitors, see what they're doing. I would go into Chrome and do an incognito search so that it's not looking at cookie history, and just see what comes up for a search term. You'll see the advertised products and the organic ones without Amazon trying to tweak that data based on your past search history. And just see how far you are down, and just keep scrolling through the pages to see where your products appear. You might also consider using A/B testing on the main image. So Amazon gives that opportunity, so you can load 2 versions up. Amazon will fire that image out at its own discretion, depending on search terms, and it will track the click-through and conversion data for each image. Let it run for a month, give it a bit of time, and then you'll see. So, but the point is, you're not guessing here at what the next step is. You're using the data to help you decide what to do. So this would be like an example of a low impact The next one is called it lost interest. It's a bit depressing. So something in the listing is stopping customers. So we're getting lots of searches, lots of impressions. Click share is good, but the click to cart is much lower. So why would people not add it to the cart? It's depressing. So there's something in the listing stopping the customer making that decision to add it. So what might that be? Well, so they've already got to the listing, okay? So they're on the page looking at your product listings. There's something there putting them off. It could be some sneaky competitors firing out some adverts on your page. You better go and have a look again in incognito, see if they're dominating your product listing page. It could be the A+ contents just looking dated and tired compared to, or maybe you haven't got any. That'd be even worse. Look at the bullet points. Are you really making it clear what your key differentiators are and grabbing someone's attention? Okay, this is like a must-have product. Are the product reviews looking good? So there's some things here that we'd look at, but just you've got to put yourselves in the mind of the buyer, where they are in the sales cycle, and think, right, imagine me, I've got my product listing here. Why wouldn't I add it to the basket? Is it the price, for example? So there'll be certain things. And then let's go on for one. This is drop the ball, we've called this. So you've got all the way along the sales cycle, you're right down at the bottom, and it stays in the cart, or most of them do. Certainly a lower proportion stay in the cart compared to your competitors. So that's just a massive loss, because they've taken the time to even add it to the cart, and they don't go and buy it. So why not? Well, it could be negative product reviews. Are you looking at the product reviews, not just the star rating, but are you doing some sentiment analysis of the words that people are using? We had a customer who ended up with some quite a large breakage rate of the products because of the packaging. So that had led to some negative reviews. So we analyzed that data. We found it was two particular SKUs that were very fragile, hadn't been packed properly, worked out where in the supply chain that issue had arisen, and fixed it. And obviously it takes time then for the positive reviews to flow through, but the point is you've found a very specific problem that has led to that reduction in the click to cart and then subsequently the order. Look at competitors. So how do they compare on price? It might be, I mean, everybody's very price conscious now with the huge inflation. So everybody's looking to get the best deal. They might just be waiting. Maybe you're selling these products on other platforms and they're waiting for a price reduction. I don't know, but you would know. And that's something you should take account of. So anyway, that's what we do. We look at poor reviews, look at recurring themes. You might need to put some Q&A in there if you've got recurring things being mentioned in the reviews. If people are saying, "Oh, it arrived and it's way smaller than I thought it was." Well, okay. How about getting a photo in there with a hand, or something that's a good reference point? So just head off any common misconceptions or objections in Q&A, but this is where it'll come up. And that's it. So in summary, that's an example, just a small fraction of what we can do with some of the analytics data that Amazon provides. We focus very much from a business perspective with our customers, help them, obviously treat them the most important customer, but also their customers are important. Now, there's two things here, two QR codes I'll leave you with. One is the LinkedIn page. So a like and a follow would be great. And then we're offering to people that have watched this video a promo where we offer a free competitor analysis based on what we've just done here. And that's the promo code and the link. So there we go. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. And yeah, for those who would like to get this free competitor analysis, check, we will put the link also in the video description so it's easy to access. But thank you so much for sharing what you know about this data goldmine that Amazon gives away, and also teaching us how to actually practically analyze the data, or at least what sellers should be analyzing. So Nick, I wanted to ask in general, you have been in the space for quite a while as well, and Paulina has been as well. What do you generally think about the recent new dashboards and data Amazon gives away for sellers? Do you feel more encouraged by it? Is it helpful, or is it also overwhelming for you as an agency owner? Because obviously you need to work out all of the systems, how to analyze it, because as you say for this example, there's no API support yet, so it's kind of, you have to figure out on your own.
Yeah, it's great that Amazon's doing this. Okay, there aren't many other e-commerce platforms that would ever give this amount of data. We speak to very large vendors and sellers who sell through bricks and mortar retailers, and they never get anything like this sort of flow back of data for them to analyze. And so when we show them what the Amazon channel can give, oh my God, I mean, they can use that back in their business for the other channels in terms of understanding that consumer behavior that they would never get. So that's fantastic. That is great. But the problem is Amazon sort of just, especially in the early stages when they release things, they just chuck it at you. Okay, so suddenly there's a dashboard, there's a whole load of screen, there's sort of some basic descriptions, and they leave the market and the agencies and, these people that are on YouTube and on LinkedIn to sort of fill the gaps in. So, and it is overwhelming. And the one thing that Amazon doesn't do very well is allow you to aggregate that data across different marketplaces. They sort of do in a bit of advertising, they're moving that way, but in here, no way. So when we get this data exposed, the first thing we do is sit down and say, what does it mean? What does it mean to our customers? So we can distill it down to the things that are important rather than just overwhelming them with loads of data, which isn't really that useful. And then we try and we build things, the dashboards that allow us to compare SKUs by marketplace and see what trends and patterns are, So if you've got a particular SKU doing really well in one market and it's not doing well in another, can this data help you understand what the difference is? Sometimes it can. But yeah, in general, Amazon is giving fantastic data, but it isn't that easy to analyze.
Well, thankfully, we have this great Amazon community and experts like yourself who are willing to, come on stage or come to our YouTube channel, who kind of help to even to get just started with analyzing and understanding what this data all means. Because obviously, also probably there are more data points that, let's say, an average seller would need to pay attention to on a monthly basis. Of course, those smaller things also matter in some occasions, but I think most important is to find the main KPIs to watch out, right?
Yeah, and that's it. And there is a lot there. There's some fabulous tools out there that you can use. But I think that's the thing. It's a bit overwhelming, especially if a new seller, or even for people that have been on the platform for a long time. Things keep getting added in the background. It's not always announced, or you might miss the announcement. And then it's just good to know what's there. So this sort of thing is more of an education. So look, it's there. This is what you can do with it. This is how you go about doing it. Even if you don't go and do it yourself, you know the question to ask. And I think that's important.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to ask one question regarding to the services you offer, because you mentioned early on in your presentation that you don't only work with Amazon sellers or brands who sell on Amazon or through vendor program, but you also help brands on other e-commerce marketplaces. So can you maybe name all of them again and give us like a bit of information what we should know about it to get sellers interested in them?
Well, they're sort of hidden jewels in a sense. So we're a British led team based in Poland, and some of the US customers and British customers, for example, or Baltics or anywhere else that we speak to aren't necessarily aware of Allegro, for example, in Poland. Or they might be aware, but a little bit intimidated how to approach it. Polish isn't the easiest language to learn. I can't speak Polish yet fluently, even though I live here. It's embarrassing. Everyone tells me off, but they all speak great English, so I get away with it. But for example, Allegro was set up some years ago by some ex-Amazon and McKinsey people. This is a really good platform. It's very dominant in Poland and actually Czech Republic as well. There's 40 million people in Poland. There's about 15 to 20 million people on Allegro. This is a huge market. I know Amazon's in Poland as well, but it doesn't touch Allegro in terms of market presence and the delivery and all the other things. How to actually get there can be a little intimidating for people. So we help them. We understand the market intimately here, but we also understand the markets, the people that are trying to sell into these markets. So obviously British base, we understand the British ecosystem, and the US, we do a lot of US sellers as well. So we can absolutely open those doors. We have great connections in terms of, warehousing, suppliers, and all sorts to help people on that journey to make it as easy as possible. We also look at eMAG, that's another example. That's Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria. That's another really good platform for those marketplaces. And, they've been around for a while. They've got the trust of the populations in those countries. So if you want to launch on those, there's others as well in different marketplaces that we cover. But if you're interested, you've got a base Amazon presence, you're not sure, be very happy to help. Just speak people, give them advice.
Very good. And in terms of helping brands or Amazon sellers, what are kind of your core services do you offer to them?
Okay, so it's the full life cycle. A lot of people come to us, even if they're existing sellers or vendors, there's usually a typical cycle. So the first piece, we do lots of analytics. We'd look at competitors, profitability, supply chain analysis, understanding what have you got to sell, how much are you going to sell it for, what profit is available in a market, and what's the propensity of that market, a particular market, to actually buy from you. So is there a market there? Should you go into it? So we do that analysis first. We move then round to the next bit, which is making your presence known on a marketplace. So that would involve getting the listings created, translated, absolutely outstanding graphical content and infographics and so on. So we do all of that. So making sure that we've done all the keyword analysis for particular markets. So you're going to rank and getting that all in place. So you've done the analysis, you've got yourself on the market. Then we move down to promotional activity. That's not just advertising, but deals and lightning deals and all the other things that you'd have to do to drive people to your listings, because there's so many sellers, millions of sellers on Amazon. You put your product there and you're not that well known, for example, you're just going to be utterly invisible. So, and you can also waste a lot of money trying to make yourself visible. So there's lots of different ways that we help people to promote their products, promote their brand, and get them prominently in front of potential shoppers. And then we move around to the final bit, which would be that reputation management. And what we mean by that is things like managing the reviews, looking at the supply chain, because that's all part of the key. Can you get your products to Amazon and then onto the customer in time? If you're FBA, if you're FBM, can you ship on time, meeting Amazon's demanding sort of windows set? If you're a vendor, can you meet the delivery windows? And they're getting tighter and tighter for people now. Amazon's giving very little leeway in terms of extending delivery windows. So if you don't meet that, you're going to get chargebacks and all sorts of problems. But in terms of that reputation management, that's reputation with the customer or with Amazon if they're your buyer. And then it's a continuous loop. We go back, if we've sold or whatever data we've captured at that point, we go back and reanalyze and keep improving. So that's what we do.
Sounds really good. And yeah, as I mentioned before, the link to your website will be in the video description as well. The offer to have a free competitor analysis. So yeah, Nick, it was great to see you again after we saw in person last at our event. And thank you again for coming here today to share your expertise with us. And I hope to see you soon again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to contact Boomed to help you with your Amazon business, you will find the link below in the description. Also, if you enjoyed the information you learned and the things you learned, don't forget to click like and subscribe to our channel. And now I would like to invite you to watch other video where you will learn how you can use Amazon Search Query Performance reports to improve your Amazon listing and PPC.